Hello everyone. In this video we will learn a new trigonometric identities, double angle formulas and half angle formulas. Let's start with the double angle. If I have the double theta, so sine 2 theta, I'm going to use the 2 sine theta cosine theta. And if I have a cosine 2 theta, I have an option of choosing one of these, 1, 2, 3, cosine square minus sine squared, or 2 cosine square minus 1, or 1 minus 2 sine square of theta. All of them will give you the same answer, so you choose any of these. Finally, sine 2 theta has also 3 formulas, which is 2 tangent minus 1 over 1 minus tangent square or 2 cotangent over cotangent square minus 1 or 2 over cotangent minus tangent. So let's see this question here. In this question we need to find tangent 2 theta, where theta is an angle between 0 to 2 pi. So we need to find the exact solution, of course without using a calculator. Tangent 2 theta, based on the formula, I can choose any of these formulas. I'm going to use the first one, actually, because it has tangent only. So I'm going to use the first one. It will be 2 tangent theta over 1 minus tangent squared theta. Now I need to find tangent from sine. Sine is an angle between 0 to pi over 2. That's quadrant 1. We know all the trig ratios are going to be positive in quadrant 1. If I create a triangle, that's opposite over hypotenuse, so 3 over 5. I need to find the adjacent. So adjacent will be equal to hypotenuse squared minus opposite squared. That's going to be square root of 16, which is 4. So tangent theta is equal opposite, which is 3, over adjacent. And again, since we're talking about quadrant 1, tangent will be positive. So 2 times 3 over 4, 1 minus 3 over 4 squared, which is equal, that's going to be 3 over 2. And here will be 1 minus 9 over 16. And of course, you can multiply here by 16 and here by 16 to add them. That's going to be 16 minus 9 over 16. So it will be 7 over 16. Now, 2 divided by 2 is 1. 16 divided by 2 is 8. And I can take the 8 up now. So 3 times 8 is 24 over 7. That's my final answer. Okay, what about this one here? Cosine theta equal negative square root of 6, that's adjacent, over hypotenuse. So let's find sine 2 theta, just to recall the formula. 2 sine theta cosine theta. Now by doing this, we know cosine theta is given, negative square root of 6 over 3. I need sine theta. In order to find it, that's theta. Adjacent to square root of 6, opposite as a 3, and I need to find the hypotenuse is a 3, and I need to find the opposite, which is hypotenuse squared minus adjacent squared, which is equal square root of 9 minus 6, that's square root of 3. Now sine theta will be equal to the opposite over hypotenuse. So I'm going to go here. We're not done. We need to look at the quadrant. We are talking about quadrant 2. And in quadrant 2, sine is positive. So we are good. Equal. When you simplify, it will be 2 times square root of 3 times square root of 6. That's going to be a negative 2 square root of 18 over 9. Now square root of 18 basically is 3 square root of 2. It's going to be negative 2 3 square root of 2 over 9. This can cross out something with here. So it's going to be negative square root of 2, negative 2 square root of 2 over 3. Okay, in this question here, cotangent is negative 2. So that's going to be negative 2 over 1. Cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent. So that's going to be adjacent, and this is going to be the opposite. Sine is negative. They want us to find cosine 2 theta. Now cosine 2 theta, it's equal to, I'm going to use, there are 3 formulas. You can use any of them. I'm going to use 2 cosine squared theta minus 1. Now I need to find cosine theta. First of all, I can create a triangle. This is A. This is theta. Adjacent is 2, opposite is 1. I need to find the hypotenuse. That's going to be square root of 5. Cosine theta will be equal to the adjacent over hypotenuse. And you can actually write as 2 square root of 5 over 5 if you want. In this stage, it does not really matter. That's going to be, I'm going to use this one for now. Because, why I said it does not matter, because you're going to take square root, squaring a square root will cross out the square root anyway. I need to decide whether cosine is positive or negative. So based on the information I have here, tangent is negative, sine is negative. If you look at the cast, tangent is negative here and here. Sine is negative here and here. So both of them are sharing the quadrant 4. So quadrant 4. So we're talking about quadrant 4. So theta basically belongs to quadrant 4. And cosine is positive there. Now if you simplify, that's going to be 4 over 5, which is going to be 8 over 5 minus 1, and that's 3 over 5. Okay, now what about the half angle formulas? Well, for half angle formulas, we are going to use for sine alpha over 2 will be a square root, positive or negative, 1 minus cosine over 2. A half angle for cosine will be positive or negative, 1 plus cosine alpha over 2. For tangent half angle, we have 3 formulas. You choose any of them. So now let's read this question here. We need to find cosine theta over 2. If sine theta is given negative square root of 3 over 3, and theta in between 3 pi over 2 and 2 pi. Well, 3 pi over 2 and 2 pi, that's actually in a quadrant 4. Okay, now let's create, let's just go back and say, what is cosine theta over 2? It's basically positive or negative, a square root, 1 plus cosine theta over 2. Now I need to find cosine theta by creating the triangle. Theta is here, opposite over hypotenuse. I need to find the adjacent, and adjacent would be equal to hypotenuse square minus opposite squared, and that's basically going to be square root of 6. Now we know that cosine theta will be adjacent over hypotenuse. Since we are talking about quadrant 4, cosine is positive there. Now I go here and say, okay, it's equal to positive or negative square root 1 plus square root of 6 over 3 over 2. And then you can start simplifying. We'll multiply here by 3 and here by 3. That's going to be square root 3 plus square root of 6 over 3 over 2. You can put now the 3 down. It's going to be positive or negative square root 3 plus square root of 6 over 2. Oh, over 6, my bad. 2 times 3 is 6. And now you need to think about the sign here. Are we going to use positive or negative? We need to think about it. Now, by looking at this is theta. We are looking for theta over 2. So what we are going to do, we'll divide each one of these by 2. And when you divide it by 2, that would be 3 pi over 4 between theta over 2 and pi. What does that mean? Pi is here. This is pi over 2. It's between 3 pi over 4, so somewhere here. So we are talking about this something here, between this angle all the way to this one. This is in quadrant 2. In quadrant 2, cosine is negative. So what we are going to do, we'll go and erase the positive sign. So this is the answer. Now what about this question here? Cotangent is the reciprocal of tangent, so this is adjacent and opposite. Cosecant is the opposite of sine, so they say sine is negative. And as you see, cotangent is positive, that means tangent is positive. Now which quadrant is that? When we are talking about sine is negative and tangent is positive, sine is negative here and here. Tangent is positive here and here. So we are talking about quadrant 3. So here theta is in quadrant 3. In quadrant 3, theta between pi and 3 pi over 2. So it's going to be pi and 3 pi over 2. Now, if we are trying to find sine theta over 2, that's equal to positive or negative square root 1 minus cosine theta over 2, which is equal. Now we need to find cosine theta. So triangle, that's again adjacent and opposite. So 4 and 3, we need to find the hypotenuse. 4 squared plus 3 squared, that's equal to 5. Now, if I know that this is 5, then cosine theta will be adjacent over hypotenuse. Since we are talking about quadrant 3, cosine is negative there. So you will go here and say, okay, the sine theta over 2 will be equal to square root, plus or minus, of course, 1 minus 4 over 5, negative 4 over 5 over 2, which is equal, plus or minus square root, that's going to be 5 over 5, right? 5 plus 4 over 5 over 2, 9 over 10, and we need to simplify this. So that's going to be equal to a square root of 9 is a 3 over square root of 10, which is equal to 3 square root of 10 over 10. Now I need to think about the sign here, which one I'm going to choose. Well, if it is in quadrant 3, I'm going to divide each one of these by 2. That's going to be 3 theta over 2 is between pi over 2 and 3 pi over 4. Well, if you think about it, pi over 2 and 3 pi over 4 is going to be in this quadrant here, because this is pi over 2. So we're talking about theta over 2 will be in quadrant 2. What does that mean? That means sine theta over 2 is going to be negative. It is going to be positive because sine in the quadrant 2 is positive. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to make it positive. Again, positive because sine theta over 2 in quadrant 2 is positive. What about this question here? Cosine theta equal negative 3 over 7 cos theta in quadrant 2. So if I draw 3 is adjacent over hypotenuse, and I need to find the opposite. And that's going to be equal to square root of 40, which is 2 square root of 2. Now tangent theta over 2, basically you can choose between these three formulas. I prefer to use the ones that does not have a radical, just because I don't want to study the sign. So here I'm going to say 1 minus cosine theta. I'm going to use the second one over sine theta. So cosine is given. I need to find sine. So sine theta will be equal opposite over hypotenuse. In quadrant 2, sine is positive. So now will be equal to 1 minus negative 3 over 7 over 2 square root of 10 over 7. We can simplify. Cross out these 7's. Now between the 2 and 10, that's going to be 5 square root of 10. You can multiply by square root of 10, numerator and denominator. That's going to be 5 square root of 10 over 10, which is equal square root of 10 over 2. Now in this question, they want us to use half-angle formula to find the exact value of each expression. Now if you try 22.5, 22.5 is basically 45 over 2, right? So my theta is going to be 45, so theta over 2. So I could say it's sine 45 over 2. Again, theta is my 45. So that's going to be equal to square root 1 minus cosine theta, which is 45, over 2. Is it positive or negative? Well, the angle 22.5 is less than 90 degrees. So it's in quadrant 1. So this angle is in quadrant 1, sine is positive. Now it's going to be equal to square root 1 minus cosine 45 is the square root of 2 over 2. Can find it by using the calculator, but this is a very famous angle. Then it's going to be 2 minus square root of 2 over 4, and in a simplest form, a square root of 4 is 2. The final answer, 2 minus square root of 2 over 2. Tangent 7 pi over 8. Well, 7 pi over 8 is basically came from tangent 7 pi over 4 divided by 2. 7 pi over 4 divided by 2. That's my theta. So theta here is 7 pi over 4. If you divide it by 2, you will get 8. So based on the formula, I'm going to use again the second one, which is 1 minus cosine theta, which is 7 pi over 4, over sine theta, which is equal 1 minus square root of 2 over 2 over negative square root of 2 over 2. Okay, now these two will cross out each other. Now it will be 2 minus square root of 2 over negative square root of 2. Now if you multiply the numerator and denominator by square root of 2, maybe negative square root of 2, it will be equal negative 2 square root of 2 plus 2 over 2. Taking 2 as a common factor will be negative square root of 2 plus 1 over 2. These two will cross out each other, and the final answer will be negative square root of 2 plus 1. Secant negative pi over 8 equal secant negative pi over 4 over 2. It's pi over 8 is basically half of pi over 4, which is equal to, now secant is the reciprocal of cosine, so I can say 1 over a square root 1 plus cosine pi over 4 over 2. Now I need to find whether it's positive or negative. Now negative pi over 4, negative pi over 8 is basically an angle here clockwise, and that's an angle in quadrant 4. An angle in quadrant 4 has a positive half angle cosine, so it's going to be positive. That's going to be equal to 1 over square root of 2 over 4. I can split 2 plus square root of 2 over square root of 4, which is 2. 1 over all of this is basically the reciprocal, so it's going to be 2 over a square root 2 plus square root of 2. So I can multiply by a square root of 2 plus square root of 2. That's going to be equal to square root 2 plus square root of 2 over 2 plus square root of 2. Now you can multiply also by the conjugate, 2 minus square root of 2, 2 minus square root of 2. But since I have a big radical here, you cannot split the radical. So basically better to keep it like here, 2 square root 2 plus square root of 2. That's it. Now in this question here, if sine x equal negative 2 over 5, where x in between pi and 3 pi over 2. Pi to 3 pi over 2, we are talking about quadrant 3. Tangent only positive in quadrant 3. Here, secant y is 5 over 3. That's the reciprocal of cosine, where y in quadrant 4. So we're talking about quadrant 4, in which cosine is positive. So now, we need to find cotangent x minus y. Well, if you want to find cotangent x minus y, you need to find tangent x and tangent y. So let's try to find it. I'm going to draw a triangle here. Let's say that this is x. So that's opposite and hypotenuse. 2 and 5. We need to find the adjacent, which is equal to 5 squared minus 2 squared. And that's going to be equal to square root of 21. Now if I know that the adjacent is square root of 21, then cosine x will be the adjacent over the hypotenuse, and tangent, I found cosine because I need it for the next question. Tangent x is opposite over adjacent. Just to remember, we are talking about quadrant 3, only tangent is positive, so this is going to be negative, and as you can see, sine is negative. Where on the other side, secant y is the reciprocal of cosine, so that's going to be hypotenuse, that's adjacent. And if I want to find the opposite side, let's say this is y, adjacent, hypotenuse 5, adjacent 3, we will need opposite, 5 squared minus 3 squared, and that's equal to 4. So now we can find sine y. What sine y is going to be the opposite, which is 4 over the hypotenuse. Cosine y is the reciprocal actually. Finally, tangent y will be equal to the opposite over adjacent. Now we need to study the sign based on quadrant 4. cosine only positive. So this is going to be negative, and sine negative, and tangent negative. Now we can find the cotangent x minus y, which is the reciprocal of the tangent x minus y, and that's going to be 1 plus tangent x tangent y over tangent x minus tangent y. And that's going to be equal to 1 plus tangent x as 2 over square root of 21, and tangent y is basically negative 4 over 3 over 2 over square root of 21 minus negative 4 over 3. So now let's simplify this. It will be 1, 2 times negative 4 is minus 8 over 3 square root of 21. And now you can cross multiply. You will multiply this by 3 and this by square root of 21. That's going to be 6 plus 4 square root of 21, and you will have a common denominator, 3 square root of 21. Now here you can multiply both by 3 square root of 21. So it will be 3 square root of 21 minus 8 over 3 square root of 21 over 6 plus 4 square root of 21 over 3 square root of 21. Now these two will cross out each other. And what is left? 3 square root of 21 minus 8 over 6 plus 4 square root of 21. Now I can multiply the numerator and denominator by the conjugate. I will multiply by the conjugate of the denominator because I need to rationalize the denominator, and that's going to be equal to, denominator will be 6 times 6 is 36, 4 by negative 4, negative 16 times 21, and that's going to be negative 300. Now about the numerator, you are going to expand, so it's going to be 18 square root of 21 minus 12 times 21 minus 48 minus 32 plus 32 square root of 21. Now if you add this and this, these two, you will get negative 300 plus 50 square root of 21. Now you can take 50, negative 50 as a common factor actually. You will, what is left? 6 minus square root of 21 over negative 300. And now these two will cross out, and this is 6, so it's going to be equal 6 minus square root of 21 over 6. That's going to be your final answer. Sine 2x will be equal to 2 sine x cosine x, which is equal to 2. What is sine x? Sine x is basically negative 2 over 5. So it's going to be negative 2 over 5. And again, cosine x is basically negative square root of 21 over 5. So you can go negative square root of 21 over 5. And when you simplify it, that will be 4 square root of 21 over 25. Finally, cosine y over 2. Well, that's going to be equal to positive or negative square root 1 plus cosine y over 2. Again, cosine y was 3 over 5. So say plus 3 over 5. Now you can simplify it, but I want to study the sign first. Based on the information given, y is in quadrant 4. That means it's in between 3 pi over 2 and 2 pi. And when you divide it by 2, you will get y over 2 between 3 pi over 4 and pi. Well, 3 pi over 4 and pi, this is pi, something here in a quadrant 2. So we can say y over 2 belongs to quadrant 2, and cosine y over 2 in quadrant 2 is negative because sine is positive in quadrant 2. So I can put negative here. Now we can continue. Square root. Here you can simplify, you can make it common denominator. So 5 plus 3 is 8 over 5 over 2. And that's going to be equal to negative square root 8 over 10, which is equal negative square root 4 over 5. Square root of 4 is 2. Square root of 5. And then you can rationalize it by multiplying the numerator and denominator by square root of 5. That's going to be negative 2 square root of 5 over 5. So that's everything, guys, in this lesson. Please let me know if you have any question, and see you in the next video. Bye bye.